Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. This is Stephen Ray, and I hope everybody's doing quite well as we're going to have a very big show today as things are really heating up in college football as we actually have this week is going to be rivalry week, and we're going to have Adam Rittenburg join us to catch up on all of the latest information in college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we get you guys ready for the upcoming football weekend.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you!
This is Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn. Worst defense ever!
So without further ado, here is the biggest Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes.
Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings, he's got it. Jennings, he's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee. They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium. Are you kidding me? My God almighty. What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end this game. What a play. Wow.
Welcome inside another exciting edition of the Stingray Show. I am your host, Stephen Ray, and let me go on ahead and bring up my co-host, Heath. Heath, how's it going, my friend?
Steven, it's a terrific Tuesday. What about you, brother?
Doing good, my friend. And by the way, I have switched out microphones, so hopefully we will not have any blah 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 anymore.
You sound like the Predator, Steven. I was kind of impressed.
So I apologize about that. Now, I don't know if it actually came out that way on social media, but we're no longer using the microphone. We're using the built-in microphone actually right here in the computer. But there was a lot of good games this past weekend.
Yes, lots of good games in the SEC and around the country. A lot of great games. Which ones did you like, Steven?
Actually, I liked the Liberty game. Even though they lost, I liked that game. It was a real good one. And then, of course, I'm trying to think. Auburn, Tennessee was pretty good there for a little while.
Yeah, that was a good game. I caught the replay of that one. Watched that one. What about Indiana storming back? They fell short, but Indiana put up a fight to the very bitter end. Good for the Hoosiers.
Hey, let me just go on ahead and start the Stingray Show with this. Is it okay if I brag on myself just a little bit, Heath?
Absolutely.
So this was last week, and I'm going to go on ahead and mute our mics so it doesn't echo, and then I will come back and I want to get your reaction. This was last week on the Stingray Show, episode number 6. All right, now, who would have thought this, Heath? This game right here that we're about to pick is actually going to be for first place in the Big Ten West. It is 2-0 Wisconsin at Northwestern, who is 4-0.
Wow. This game is going to be it's going to be interesting, to say the least. I like Wisconsin. Kind of running away with this, but we've seen this in the SEC over the years. A team that starts stringing together some wins, they start playing above their head.
Yes.
And when it becomes a close game, they find ways to win. Some people call it the Mo, some people call it Mojo, some people call it momentum, whatever you call it. Northwestern seems to have it this year, but I think Wisconsin's going to win.
I'm actually going with Northwestern in the win there. And Wisconsin's a 7.5-point favorite, and the FPI gives Wisconsin an 86% chance to win, but I'm actually going with Northwestern.
Wow.
That would be that. I mean, can you imagine if we got to the Big Ten championship game and it was Indiana Northwestern?
I would watch it. I would make an event. I'd make a whole day of just invite the neighbors over for. Oh, hang on, I can't do that. Right, I'm not going there.
Right.
But I would cook out. I'd grill out. I would make a big deal out of that game. We would make a big deal on this show about the game.
Man, I got to tell you, I pulled the upset there, and I actually got it right.
You did get it right, Stephen. You nailed that one. I'm always going to pull for the underdog. That's the kind of guy I am. I love underdogs. I love the underdog story. Northwestern defies the odds all the time in the Big Ten. I didn't think they could do it against Wisconsin. I was wrong. Props to Northwestern. I mean, the purple soaring high. Hopefully they can keep the momentum up. Can they run the table, Stephen?
Yeah, I think they can. I really do. I think that they are poised. And by the way, Wisconsin had a ton of injuries going into that game, and also they were down due to with the COVID issue. They hadn't played in a while, and I think that played into it as well.
Yeah, anytime you got injuries, that hurts. Anytime you haven't played and have a layoff, I mean, you're just going to get rusty. We all know that.
Yes.
Both of those, it could get ugly and become a disaster. But man, look at Northwestern, man. They're making it happen, Stephen. What are they, 5-0 now?
Yeah, and they won that game with a defense, man. I mean, 17-7. The first half turnovers. The 4 first half turnovers were the most by Wisconsin since 2004. So props to them for turning the ball, getting Wisconsin to turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can create turnovers, it's always a positive, right?
Yes.
But Northwestern, I mean, are they going to be that team? We all thought Indiana was going to be that team until this week. We thought Indiana might be that team out of nowhere. We all thought Liberty could be that team. And sadly, we know what happened to Liberty. But is Northwestern now that team?
I think so. I really do. I really feel like they are the feel-good story for this year.
They absolutely are right now. I can tell you that.
And they got a pretty interesting game coming up this weekend as well. And I believe they've got Michigan State, if memory serves me correctly.
And if I'm not mistaken, we got a Northwestern grad coming on the show today.
Yes, Adam Rittenburg. All right, man. Well, did you happen to watch any of the Thursday night game from this past weekend, or last week, I should say?
Very briefly. I watched some of it. I watched mostly highlights, but yes, I watched some of it. Okay.
Tulane they were clicking on all cylinders. They actually went up 14-0 on Tulsa, and then Tulsa scored 21 unanswered to come back and force overtime. And did you see the play that ended it all for Tulsa?
Yes. Crazy to see. Hey, it's 2020. Maybe we should stop using the word crazy in 2020. Everything's here. Look at that.
There was a Hail Mary pass that ultimately forced overtime right there. And then in overtime, as you will see here in just a second, they picked the ball off and return it for the game-winning touchdown in double overtime.
Look at that.
That's insane, is it not?
How many times have we seen – because I don't think we've ever seen a defensive score in overtime. I'm sure there's one out there that I don't know of. But to my knowledge, this is the first defensive score in overtime to wrap up a game. We've all seen defensive stops to end the game, but not a defensive score.
Right. There, of course, is the chain there, the turnover chain, whatever you want to call it, the turnover necklace. So, man, that was a really good game. And Tulsa, I mean, they are really, really good. And if they hadn't lost to Oklahoma State earlier in the year, they could be in the position that Cincinnati and Liberty were in.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough break. That's the thing about the smaller schools, even in the Power Five. The feel-good stories in the Power Five that start off undefeated. One loss and media is just going to bash you and throw you to the side.
Yes.
And that's sad. I have not seen the rankings this week. Did Liberty fall completely out of the rankings this week?
I think they did, yes.
That's just crazy. And I'm sure Indiana fell tremendously, which they shouldn't have.
Right.
But I'm sure Indiana fell out of the top 10 as well. I have not looked at the rankings at all.
Well, let me just go on ahead and talk about the next game. And I'm actually pretty still ticked off about this game because this game had an egregious call at the end of a bad call that ultimately wiped a touchdown away from Purdue, ultimately giving Minnesota the much-needed win over the Boilermakers at home.
I don't know if you watch any of John Boy Media, Stephen, but he actually talked about this game and all the lip reading that was going on the sideline. This is a family show. Don't read the lips on the sideline. Wear your mask, right?
Yes.
The coaches were just filling the ref's ear up. But you know what? Rightfully so. That was a bad call that they took off the board for Purdue. Just a terrible call.
Yes.
And Stephen, you've been on officials all year. What did you think?
That was a horrible call, and we're going to let this play out. Now, of course, Purdue had one last opportunity. They threw the pick, and that sealed the deal. But I've actually got the sequence of plays that leads up to the PI, and as soon as that quits, I will go ahead and load that as well so that you can see how egregious that call really was.
Man, it was – I have no idea how he could even think that was offensive pass interference. I have no idea.
Okay, so here's what we're talking about. Now watch the defender right there. He does not even touch him at all that much that you think. All right, so watch it again as we're going to have an end zone look right from where the official is actually looking. Man, that really, I mean, that was a key moment. And as you can see, Braum, man, he was livid, and he has every right to be because of this call.
Yeah, don't read his lips if you're watching. Yeah, there's a lot of words there.
Okay, so right here, you really can't see very much.
That right there is what they're calling offensive pass interference. I just don't see it. I just do not see it. The side official threw that flag.
Yes.
What I mean.
Watch this. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. Now, here in just a second, we are going to show you an aerial view of this thing. And as you can see, there's a little bit of an extension right there. However, I'm going to zoom in on this video here in just a second and show you what happened. And honestly, we see this every week that's not called in the SEC. Do we not?
It depends on who's playing Bama.
Yes. Right there. I mean, he didn't even touch him. I mean, he doesn't even, I mean, that's an egregious call. And I think that, Braum has every right to be upset with that call.
Braum said a lot of words, and they all had 4 letters in them.
Yes.
Yeah, it was don't read his lips.
And by the way, Minnesota extends its win streak versus Purdue to 3 with that victory.
Wow.
All right.
Terrible.
Yeah. Now we're actually going to talk about the game of the week in the Big Ten. And actually, I was wrong about this call. However, I was close, though. They almost made a comeback. I picked Indiana. I was wrong. But props to Ohio State for getting the job done.
Yes. Ohio State, they're the powers that be in the Big Ten. We've known that. That's not news. That's not a breaking story. Everybody in college football knows Ohio State is a major contender
Yes.
this year. We know that Justin Fields is probably he's probably a Heisman finalist. Will he be the Heisman winner? Don't know yet.
Right.
But Ohio State, they put it in cruise control, and it almost come back to bite them, Stephen.
Yes.
It was what, 35-7?
Yes.
And then, it turned out to
Be
here
35, yep.
But Indiana just, hey, they got the poor start, just the poor turnovers at the wrong time. I mean, it was just kind of crazy, but oh man, give props to Ohio State. And we keep thinking that Indiana might be playing over their head. That's not the case. Indiana is a legit good football team.
Yes.
So I just hope that Indiana doesn't let this loss beat them 2 weeks in a row.
Right. And by the way, Justin Fields did not play up to Heisman caliber. He had 3 picks.
I'd love to sit down and look at Johnny Manziel and Timmy Tebow and all those guys, their worst day during their Heisman years.
Yes.
I'm sure it'll be more often than not they had a bad game where they threw 2-3 picks, whatever the case might be. But the important thing is their team won the game.
Yes.
So.
And by the way, like I said last week, the only suspect spot for Ohio State is their pass defense. They let Michael Penix Jr. throw for 491 yards. That was the most given up by a Buckeye defense since 1985, and I was not even on the earth then.
I was. I remember the 85 Bears. That was awesome. What do you think? 85. Gosh, Stephen. I would be my son's age. I'd be about 10 years old. I'm trying to think who would have been some powerhouse teams that year. I think Illinois might have been a powerhouse that year.
I'm gonna pull you up full screen real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. The 85 season in college football, that was a long time ago. Let's see. Miami was probably a player back then. I'm trying to think. Oklahoma, Penn State. Penn State was a big-time player back then. Bama was down. Auburn was surging at that time. Let's see. Did Bo win his Heisman in 85? Maybe you can tell us in the comments, right? No, Ohio State's a team. They're a contender. We all know they're a contender. Will they be able to pull it off? I don't know yet. There's some holes that we saw this past weekend in Ohio State's game. They're not big, but they are holes. They're not a perfect team. They can be beat. They do have some weaknesses. I'm worried more about Ohio State's depth going 3 deep, as we had Coach Hugh Freeze on the show here multiple times, and he said it more than once. You've got to have 3 deep at every position to compete for a championship. I don't know if Ohio State is there. And with the crazy COVID year that we're having, you definitely will have to have 3 deep. That will be tried and true all season long, especially when we get to the playoffs. So Ohio State, they could be a major player. They may not be. Let's see. I see Tony's question. College football. Yeah, they had a great podcast there, Tony. Steven, you back?
Yep, I'm back, man. All right, so Ohio State is definitely not a team that is a good football team right now. They're good, but they're not great, and I don't really feel like that defense is exceptional right now.
Yeah, if Ohio State and Bama played today, there's going to be a lot of points scored in that football game.
Yes.
Both those defenses are not premier defenses. They're not.
No. All right. Are you ready to go to our first SEC game?
Sure.
What did you think about the lackluster performance? Or, we really are used to seeing this team put up over 40 points a game and have over 500, 600 yards of offense. And that really wasn't the case in the Florida Vandy game. They kind of sleepwalked through this 11 a.m. kickoff up there in Nashville.
I forgot who called this game. But they were talking about, or was it, gosh, Stephen, was it Dave Neal when he was on the show last week?
Dave Neal called Mississippi State.
I know Dave Neal called Mississippi State, Georgia, but was it Dave on our show that talked about how playing the 11 o'clock game in Nashville, it just will kill you. It will drain you and you sleepwalk. That's the game that we're talking about. It was an early game. For Florida, it was 10 o'clock with the time change for them, 11 o'clock there in Nashville Central Time. And so here's Florida. It's a little chilly outside. They got to play a 10 a.m. game. They're playing Nashville. There's no one in the stadium. They definitely slept walk into that one.
Right.
So, that game does not concern me too much about Florida. It doesn't concern me at all.
No.
But Florida played a lot of players in that game, especially in the second half. So I'm not too concerned. But I will say this, Kevin Seals at Vanderbilt, that kid is getting better every week. The quarterback at Vandy, Kevin Seals, he is getting better and better and better each and every week. He is going to be the future of that program. He's going to be the face of that program. Will Derek Mason be there much longer? I don't know.
Right.
But Kevin Seals will be there, and he's going to be the face of Vanderbilt, and he's going to be the starter for the next 3 years there. And, if he develops, if they get a coach that comes in there, whether it be an offensive coordinator for Derek Mason or a new system and a new head coach, Kevin Seals can be an all-SEC quarterback. He is capable. He's a very smart quarterback. He's very accurate, and he makes plays happen. He's going to be a guy to really watch for in the years coming.
And by the way, that marked Florida's 9th straight 35-plus point game, a school record for them.
Wow. Dan Mullen's got it rolling, man. He's got it rolling.
Too bad he couldn't have done that at Mississippi State, though,
Yeah. A lot of State fans want to hate on Dan. Dan's just like every one of us. He wanted to do what's best for his family. And I always heard through the grapevine, Dan wanted to be an NFL head coach. And, there's not, to my knowledge, a single coach ever hired straight out of Starkville to the NFL. I mean, Bruce Arians was in Starkville for a while, but he left to do other things before he made it to the NFL.
Yes.
Same thing with Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens was there, but he left and had to go take other jobs before he made it to the NFL. Same thing for Dan Mullen. He wants to be in the NFL. And he's like, I have to go to another school to coach to make it to the NFL. So props to Dan Mullen because he is well on his way to making that happen.
Well, are you ready for a little math?
I'm a mathlete. Bring it on.
All right. Can you tell me when the last time Illinois beat Nebraska in Lincoln?
Oh, man. 1958. I have no idea.
Illinois knocked off Nebraska 41-23 in Lincoln. Man, after Nebraska knocked off Penn State, that was a one step forward, two step back game.
Yeah. Lovie Smith, I think we've talked on this show more than once about how's Lovie keeping his job.
Yes.
And then he wins a game like that. That's how Lovie's keeping his job. I'm a Lovie Smith fan. I am. But you just kind of wonder what in the world is going on. But the more important thing is Nebraska. What the heck is going on?
I know. It's ridiculous. Okay, the answer right here.
I said that. That's 1924.
That's insane.
Man, 96 years ago, Stephen.
That is a lot of football.
That is a lot of football.
I mean, I have no clue what is going on up there in Nebraska. And how much longer are they going to actually accept that?
Well, they've been accepting it for a long time now.
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska has been going down for years. They were on top of the college football world in the early 90s.
Right.
And now it's sad. But think what's happened, Stephen. I mean, let's put Nebraska and Tennessee in the same scenario here. Nebraska, playing on national television used to be a big deal. Playing on TV, period, even if it was regional, used to be a big deal.
Right.
It's not a big deal anymore. And that's what they used to tell recruits. Tennessee used to get all these recruits from California. Nebraska used to get recruits from all over the country. Hey, come here. All of our games are on TV, and your parents your friends and everybody else can watch you. All your family, friends, anybody and everybody will be watching you nationwide. Well, now with, technology advances, we can watch anybody anywhere. And so it's not a big deal to play on TV anymore.
Right.
And it's kind of like Tennessee. Tennessee can't get it done. And it's kind of like Nebraska. They can't get it done. And another thing with Nebraska, when they were riding high, I mean, it was about running football. It was about defense. That's not the case anymore in college football. Everyone's throwing it all over the yard. You got the RPOs, you got the spread, you got the air raid. All these offenses are about throwing the ball. It's about spreading defenses out. And so Nebraska has not advanced. I mean, I remember years ago when Southern Miss, and I know we got a little bit of a Southern Miss following on the show, and props to you, Golden Eagles.
Yes.
Southern Miss, beat Nebraska at Nebraska. That was a huge deal.
Yeah.
At least we thought it was at the time. But slowly and surely, it just keeps fading and fading and fading for the Cornhuskers. So massive, massive props to the Fighting Illini and Lovie Smith making it happen. They're going to party like it's 1924.
Yes, I know. So when I saw that, I was like, that nugget has to go on the Stingray Show. All right, man. Well, you were actually texting me while you I'm gonna pull you up full real quick. I'm having issues with my light. Live TV, right?
Hey, don't worry about it, man. Steven's lamp there, circle lamp, got into his way. Hopefully he'll figure that out. No, college football, it's been the unexpected. Going back to Lovie Smith in Illinois and going back to Nebraska, that game, I mean, I don't think anyone saw that coming this weekend. 1924, the last time the Illini won against Nebraska in Lincoln. That's just a fascinating stat. That's the thing with college football. All these stats that we've had over the year for these powerhouses, they're falling over and over and over. And yes, Alabama fans, when Nick Saban leaves, it's going to start happening to Alabama. Tennessee's going to beat you. You're not going to finish in the top two. There's going to be a year you fall to third or fourth. That's just part of college football. Programs are always on the rise in the fall. What does Nebraska have to do to turn things around? I don't know. Terrible weather. You're out in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest. Recruits don't like that. And I don't know how Nebraska turns that around. That's going to be a very hard situation.
And I'm back, so I'm good now. Everything is good on my end, so we are good. And we actually have someone who wants to jump on here on the show, and he wants to ask us a question about the Missouri and Arkansas, the coaching staffs there, because obviously that game was postponed this weekend, so there was a little bit of shuffling. So let me go ahead and bring up Tom, but I'm going to let him pronounce his last name because that one is a tongue twister. Tom, how are you?
Oh.
Hey, Stingray. Hey, Heath. Love to be on the show. It's Tom Wingbermuley here in St. Louis.
Awesome, man.
Tom, what's your
Yeah,
question?
I was wanting to ask you guys. I know a lot of you're referencing the coaching carousel a little bit. And champ over there in South Carolina kind of got one. Didn't expect the to be as big as in years prior, but with that opening and then some other openings, I was wondering what assistant coaches. I know Ryan Walters at Mizzou and Arkansas both have been getting some traction lately for some head coaches. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on seeing if those guys or any other SEC coordinators you thought would be making the jump to head coacher.
You want to take it, Heath?
Personally, I hope Barry Odom gets out of the SEC soon. I think every offensive coordinator is scared to death of Barry Odom.
Right.
I was a little hesitant of Barry Odom getting fired last year from Missouri. I know a lot of Missouri fans agreed with it. I know we've had people on the show that talked about that in detail and thought it was the right time to move on, and that's okay. But I know Barry Odom makes just life very difficult for every offensive coordinator in the league. He is a phenomenal guy. Matter of fact, when we had Hugh Freeze on, we asked him what are some of the names that he fears. The very first name he said without blinking was Barry Odom. So I think Barry will get another job. I don't think it will be a Power 5 job. I think you will have to go outside the Power 5 to get a head coaching gig. I think Barry wants to be a head coach. I think he wants to be a head coach at a Power 5 school. And he might have to take the step down to move up. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
As far as other guys and other names.
Yeah, I thought with Odom, being a Mizzou guy, Odom at Mizzou, I did think they let him go a little early, but you hired him before he was really ready for the job, and you expected him to grow into it a lot more, and I just don't think the growth is quicker as they wanted it to be, and so they made the change. I think coordinator down there at Arkansas, he's from Arkansas, so he can talk to all those high school guys and recruit down there in Arkansas, and he doesn't have all those pressures of being a head coach, but I was surprised to see his name floated out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, man, thank you for joining us. Do you have anything else?
No, love the show, guys. It was just love talking about coaching carousel and seeing what you guys thought. I mean, do you think rid of the make you think?
Yes, I agree with that.
And Tom, I'll tell you this.
I really
let you go.
Yeah.
I really look forward to the carousel picking up. Every time we brought somebody on, especially a writer, I always ask them about the coaching carousel. Who's going to be on it? Will it even start? And everyone kept saying, I just don't see anyone getting fired this year. Now we're talking about multiple coaches and schools making moves to make things happen. So I think the carousel is going to pick up. I don't think it's going to be as busy as it has been in years past, but I do expect it to be picking up, and business is going to be good for the carousel here in about another month. I think we're going to see a lot of shuffling happen. Not as much as 2019 or 18, but I think we're going to see a good bit of shuffling come up.
Yeah, well, I think the only reason Derek Mason has his job is the Missouri win last season. That win gave him another year, but I don't think he can go winless in a season and keep your job in the SEC.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, buddy. Take care. And by the way, real quick, happy Thanksgiving to you. All right. Well, man, real quick, for those that are just joining us, if you guys would like to join the Stingray Show, do right there, which is right underneath me. You guys can send me or Heath a direct message, ask us your questions, and then you can join us on the show just like Tom did just a second ago and ask us your questions and get involved with us.
Stephen, thinking about the carousel, I mean, let's just say that Dan Mullen gets an NFL gig this year. I don't think he does. But
Right.
let's say that he does. And what if Georgia sputters toward the end?
Yes.
I know Georgia fans are a little upset with Kirby right now. But, we got changes at South Carolina. We know Tennessee is right there. Vandy might be doing something. What if things get out of control and ugly with LSU with all the off-the-field stuff, and they decide to make a change from Eddie O?
Right.
I mean, there could be a lot of changes come up.
Well, let me just go on ahead and say, without further ado, we are very, very excited to bring on our next guest. He is a writer for ESPN and, oh, by the way, a Northwestern grad. So that is exciting. So without further ado, let me go on ahead and bring in our guest for today, Mr. Adam Rittenburg. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And first, let me just go ahead and ask, are there any kind of breaking stories right now that we need to look forward to for the games upcoming this weekend?
Well, unfortunately, it's just, will some games happen? And that's been the case here every week. Certainly watching what could happen with Minnesota, Wisconsin, the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe. I think they've played it more than 100 years consecutively. And so with Minnesota pausing team activities earlier this week, that's one that, I think we'll be monitoring. I know USC announced a positive test earlier today. They're continuing their practices. They haven't had additional positive tests at this time. But, given how things have gone in the Pac-12, I think the USC Colorado game is another one we'll be watching. I'm sure you guys have discussed the SEC's already moved around some games and some opponents for this week. So you already have that news, and, it'll just be down to the wire. Like, unfortunately it has been here, every week of the season, but with more teams and more regions. And, it's going to be one of those where we'll see more cancellations. I guess UAB and Southern Miss already canceled today. So that's another one.
Adam, I got two questions for you. One's from our viewer, Tony. He is badly missing campus conversations. He is begging for you guys to bring back campus conversations. What happened to campus conversations?
Yeah, I can't get into it too much. It's more of one of those political moves. I would just say, Tony, that, I would love to bring it back as much as you would love to hear it. It was one of my favorite things to do. It has been one of my favorite things to do at ESPN. Obviously, we do have a great podcast going on that Kevin Nagandi hosts, and I appear on that from time to time. But you'll certainly miss those days where, we were on there with Ivan Maisel and Ryan McGee and Jake Trotter and Brad Edwards. We had a lot of fun. Heather Dinich. We had a lot of fun with those shows over the years.
Now, my question to you is not for you, the professional. It's you, the fan. Is Northwestern going to run the table?
Yeah, I can say it probably in both realms. It looks they have a pretty good chance. I mean, these would maybe be their three weakest opponents of the year. It doesn't mean that, then they know this. They're not the type of team that can get out there and just be better than the opponent and take anything for granted. But, Michigan State's struggling in year one under Mel Tucker. They've been turning the ball over a lot, which is sort of feeding right into Northwestern's hands. I mean, they had 5 turnovers last week against Wisconsin. And then they get Minnesota dealing with obviously the COVID situation right now. We'll see where they're at in 2 weeks. And then Illinois, Northwestern should be heavily favored to beat them at home. So yeah, I mean, they certainly could stumble once. I'd be surprised if they stumble more than once. And mathematically, it's almost impossible for them to not win the West Division for the second time in 3 years, which is certainly remarkable, given how much they fell back last year.
Now, Michael Wilbon is one of your ESPN colleagues. Do you and Michael ever trade notes or jokes or your times at Northwestern?
He's got much more important people to talk to in his world than me, but certainly admire his work. And I do have there is a kind of email list where a lot of the Northwestern media alums are on there, and so you kind of hear time to time what people think there, but. Yeah, I certainly keep in touch with a lot of my friends, either that I went to school with or that went before or after me that are working in the media, either sports media or just normal media.
Well, are you surprised by the job that the Indiana Hoosiers have done this year by being undefeated up until they ran into Ohio State? Did you actually see that coming?
Yeah, I certainly thought it was possible. In talking to a number of coaches on the staff, including Coach Allen before the year, I know they felt really good about their roster and really felt that even though last year they did a lot of historic things, they could be even better this year with how they've recruited and some of the players coming back, especially Mike Penix coming back from injury. They let a really good quarterback, we just saw at Northwestern, they let Peyton Ramsey walk out the door because they had so much confidence in Mike Penix, who had that huge game against Ohio State, as you're seeing here with the highlights. And I know they've recruited really well at wide receiver. They're getting some guys out of the state of Florida, like a Watt Fillier and Freifogel, another really good player. And Tom Allen has had a really interesting career, guys, because he was a high school coach, not just in the Midwest, but in the South, and then an assistant coach mostly in the South and Southeast. And he's really used those experiences to help him from a recruiting standpoint. He's got a young staff, a lot of really talented younger assistants, and they've put together a very talented roster. And so I'm not that surprised, honestly. Certainly surprised that Michigan and Penn State are down, but not that surprised that Indiana beat both of them. And I think they just showed tremendous fight in that Buckeye game last week after falling behind by 28 points, that they didn't give up and they made it a game there at the end.
We've had several guests on the show talk about the coaching carousel and things like that, and of course everything that's going on at Michigan. We've had multiple people say that Jim Harbaugh is not going to leave, and if he does, it's his decision. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. No, I mean, I think if they lost to Rutgers, maybe that would have shifted the conversation a little bit. But I even if they struggle here down the stretch and get blown out by Ohio State again, I still think it's going to be in Harbaugh's court as to what he ultimately does there, because of who he is and his connection to Michigan and the fact that, they would owe him quite a bit of money to fire him. And it just doesn't seem like, you talk to people that know the folks in that program, and there just doesn't seem like anybody who feels comfortable walking into Jim's office and saying, "Hey, Jim, you're fired." I mean, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Has he been as great as we all thought he would be when he arrived back in December of 2014? No, but the program is definitely in better shape. I mean, if you guys remember, that was a 5-7 team. They lost their recruiting momentum, and they have done a lot of good things under his watch. They have not beaten Ohio State. They've not won the Big Ten. They haven't really competed well at a national level, but I think it's easy to kind of look at how the season's going and think, okay, we got to get rid of this guy. I really think the likeliest outcome, guys, and I'm sure we can talk more about the carousel. I love talking coaching carousel with Harbaugh, and this kind of speaks to how unusual of a guy he is. And you guys know how coaches are. He would enter the last year of his contract as a total lame duck and be okay with it. I think he would view it in his mind. I came here to serve my alma mater. I'm going to finish my contract, and then we're going to figure out what we do from that point on, because it would not make any sense for Michigan to extend Jim Harbaugh at what he's making right now. I know that these schools, it's like they never went to business school on some of these extensions because they just get fleeced by the coaches and their agents. But especially with the pandemic and the team not performing well, you could offer Jim a kind of, halfway extension, but I think it would almost be maybe better for both sides to say, let's evaluate after the contract is over in 2021.
Since you brought up the carousel, what are some things you're watching? What schools do you think might be making a move?
Sure. Well, obviously, just South Carolina and the developments there. That they're the one Power 5 school that's open. I think Vanderbilt's a place I continue to watch, and depending on who you talk to, some people think it will open. Some people say it won't. But I think it's an interesting school because they've never had a winless season. They've had 1-win seasons before, but to go winless even in a year like this, they're certainly challenging with the COVID and all SEC schedule. I think Vanderbilt may have a decision to make on Derek Mason. Tennessee as well. As crazy as it sounds, they announced an extension for Jeremy Pruitt before the year. I think if they were to lose out or perform really poorly here down the stretch, that's a place that I think would maybe consider something, especially with a guy like Hugh Freeze who's available. I think if Tennessee made a move, though, it would really be, we think we can get Hugh Freeze. It's not, let's do a national search and let's consider the Billy Napiers and whoever else. It's like, we want this guy. Otherwise, we're going to bring back Jeremy Pruitt for year 4. Otherwise, guys, there's not a ton. I mean, Illinois, big win last week for Lovie Smith. They will be they're heavy underdogs in their last 3 games. I think it'd be hard for them to win any of them, but I think getting that second win was big. for Lovey. And then I just don't sense any of the Pac-12 schools, maybe only playing 5 or 6 games before you have to make that decision, that they would pull the plug on a guy like Clay Helton or on Kevin Sumlin, whose team certainly did not play well last week.
What about all of the off-the-field stuff that keeps coming out about James Franklin? Could we potentially see something there up at Penn State?
I don't sense that that's the case. Certainly it's something to monitor given the history of the school. And I know the report that came out about a week ago was troubling, some of the allegations in there. But I know that James has very strong support from athletic director Sandy Barber. His tenure just undoubtedly from an objective standpoint has been a successful one with the Big Ten championship in 2016, a couple of other top 10, top 12 finishes. But this year is obviously going very poorly, and I don't think it's a year that anyone should get a pass for because everybody's dealing with these circumstances from one degree to another. So it's definitely a trying time for James and that program, but I really don't sense he's in any sort of real trouble.
Going back to what you said about Tennessee, do you actually think Philip Fulmer, who was a ground and pound kind of guy, would take a chance on a guy like Hugh Freeze who's going to throw it all over the yard? Do you think Philip Fulmer can let go of that? Because Jeremy Pruitt is not really one to throw it around the yard. Do you think Philip Fulmer would hire a coach that would just be willing to spin it and fling it all over the place?
Yeah, I guess I'd ask Coach Fulmer, do you have your eyes open as to what's going on in college football? I mean, do you want to keep getting beat like Alabama, like every year, like they do? And you see what LSU is doing at quarterback, and you're seeing what Florida is doing at quarterback. I mean, you can sit in this system, or you can just continue or you can move forward. I think this would be a progressive move for Tennessee. I hear what you're saying, Heath, and certainly, that's who Philip Fulmer is, but the game has changed. Nick Saban used to be somebody different. He's acknowledging that you have to play offense in a different way in this game. And certainly the quarterback position, it drives everything in college football right now. And so, the one thing you can say about Hugh Freeze throughout his career, he's developed quarterbacks and he has dynamic offenses. And I don't think any of us could, with a straight face, sit here and say Tennessee has a dynamic offense right now.
Right. You follow that up with Kirby Smart at Georgia. That's kind of been the talk around the South here in the last recent weeks is Kirby's not doing it. Kirby's trying to play, he's trying to run the ball, ground control, run the clock. He's trying to win football games from 1990. He's been successful at it, but can Kirby do this long term? Because I'm starting to think, and I'm starting to doubt a little bit of Georgia, because he will not let the offense flourish and open. Your thoughts on Kirby?
Yeah, I hear that criticism, and I think it's a valid criticism of him. And, you have to remember when he was winning national championships as an Alabama assistant, that's how they won games. And this is how he grew up in the SEC, knowing how to win games. But I think, you're seeing the highlights right now of JT Daniels and what he can do. And maybe he's the guy that they've been waiting for that can give that offense more of a spark in the passing game. I was troubled by how poorly they defended against Mississippi State, but you came away pretty encouraged overall with the offensive performance with JT Daniels. So I think actually Todd Monken has done a decent job this year as a first-year play caller, but I think your criticism or your point is valid. Will Kirby truly give up the reins enough to let Todd do everything that you need to do to compete with Alabama and Florida? Because, again, I don't know how – all you have to do is watch those game tapes if you're Kirby Smart to realize we probably need to adopt this style. Look at how you lost to Alabama. Look at how you lost to Florida. It's hard not to say we got to join them in playing that way and having the quarterback and the passing game be the focus of our offense.
You mentioned Mississippi State. Yeah, a lot of folks here in the Magnolia State, where I'm located currently, right outside of Memphis. A lot of people here in the Magnolia State are a little bit happy and tickled to see that Mike Leach in the air raid seems to be clicking. Can Mike Leach make the air raid work in the SEC?
Well, I think it'll be something he'll make it work sometimes. I don't think he's going to win an SEC championship. I think there'll be some games where, Mike Leach just beat, fill in the blank. I think it's hard to play that style and ultimately achieve at the high level. I know he did that with Texas Tech. Was it back in 2008? They were on the cusp of maybe making the college football playoff. but I think it'll be tougher in the SEC because Mississippi State's never, a lot, kind of like what we were just talking about. A lot of the offenses in that league, they may not be the air raid, but they're coming around to the idea that you have to throw it, you have to be quarterback focused, and they're gonna in most years get better players than Mississippi State will. So they will have the ability to win some big games. Will they have the ability to win a lot of them and ultimately win the West Division and get to Atlanta? I think that's going to be really tough, but it'll be exciting. I think it's always exciting with Mike Leach, and they're a team that you can never take for granted, as Georgia found out this past weekend.
Do you feel like that this is I know this is a crazy year already, but do you feel like that this is a year that maybe a Cincinnati or a BYU could make their way into the 4-team playoff?
I still don't think it will happen that way, but it's I think anything's possible given how volatile the sport has been this year. We could have some upsets on championship weekend that change things, but if everything holds, and that means Alabama winning out and Ohio State winning out and Clemson and Notre Dame winning out, getting to that ACC championship game, I just don't know if there's room for a school like Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati, I think, has the better chance of the two because of their strength of schedule in the AAC. The fact that I think the committee, the rankings are coming out later tonight, I think the committee will reward a win like UCF because they know how talented UCF is on the road. They also get Tulsa, a really good team, really good defense on the road in a few weeks. And so that should help their profile, whereas BYU, they don't play for the next couple of weeks unless something changes. And then they get, I think it was San Diego State at the end. So, they just don't have – BYU normally has a big edge in terms of schedule strength over a school like Cincinnati, but because all those Power 5 leagues had to pull out of those games, even though BYU's been so impressive with Zach Wilson on offense, they just don't have – I don't think they have the schedule strength to even qualify this year, guys.
And one final question from me. Obviously, this weekend is somewhat rivalry week because we have a couple of them that can't be played due to COVID, but we have Alabama, Auburn, and then, of course, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. If you had to look around the country, what is your number one favorite rivalry and why?
That's going on this weekend or just in general?
Just in general.
Wow. I grew up a Cal-Stanford guy. It's hard for me not to say that. I grew up in California, and that was the first rivalry game that I can remember going to. I still remember my dad. He was not even much of a college football fan, but he went to Berkeley, and he took me to the Cal-Stanford game in 1992. We just moved out there the year before, and I didn't understand what it was. And just sitting there in the stands, I think I was probably 11 years old at the time, just seeing why do these two schools hate each other and getting a sense of that. So it's hard for me to go against Cal Stanford, but obviously the Iron Bowl is great. Ohio State, Michigan is a wonderful rivalry. Texas, Oklahoma is a great one. There's some great historic ones like Nebraska and Oklahoma, which I wish, I think they're playing again in a couple of years. That'll be fun to watch again. So many of the rivalries, unfortunately, have been kind of shortchanged here by realignment, but we still get a lot of good ones this weekend.
I got a quick question for you, Adam. Let's just say that Florida wins out and they win the SEC championship over Alabama. There's a one-loss Florida team that lost to A&M, a one-loss Alabama team who lost to Florida, and a one-loss team, A&M, who lost to Bama. How in the world is the playoff committee going to figure this one out?
Yeah, I think, you certainly could make a case for all three. I don't think we'll ever see three teams from one league in a 14 playoff. I think they would look at it like this. Florida beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. We got to put them in. They're the SEC champion. And then Alabama, undefeated all year, I would assume they would not get blown out in that game. So they're probably losing a tight game to Florida in the SEC championship, and they have a definitive win. I know A&M fans don't like to hear it, and they're playing a lot better, but they didn't edge A&M. They beat them soundly, and so I think A&M would be the odd team out, unfortunately. So if you're A&M, you want to root for Alabama to essentially eliminate Florida, and then you want to root for some craziness elsewhere so that maybe you can get in as that 14.
Well, my last question: who are the four teams we're going to see tonight? Who do you think we're going to be the fours there with the selection committee?
Yeah, I mean, just by any metric, I don't know how Alabama's not number one, unless they really weight that Notre Dame win over Clemson, which was a great win, certainly by the Irish. And it's kind of why I don't think Notre Dame will be any lower than 2. I don't know how you can put anybody ahead of either of those teams at 1 and 2. I think Ohio State will be 3 or 4, and then it's tough. Is it Clemson? Is it A&M? Is it a Cincinnati? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if maybe they give a Cincinnati team that's played a lot of games and been really convincing in most of their wins. I know they only won by 3 last week. Maybe they slide them in at 4. But I think it'll probably be Bama 1, Notre Dame 2, Ohio State 3, and Clemson at 4.
Well, Adam, before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to plug or give a shout out to or tell people how they can find you?
Sure. Well, you can find me on Twitter at ESPN Rittenberg. That's Rittenberg. And then I have a piece every Monday on ESPN Plus. Usually it's coaching carousel related or coaching related, but I have another one out. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be, but every Monday I'll have those pieces out. And then obviously, follow us for any news as things here develop. There's been a lot of news, as you guys know, throughout this very unusual season.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully we can do it again, and we hope you have a wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same to you guys. Hope you have a good holiday, and thanks for having me on.
All right.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, man. Well, that was Adam Rittenberg, and we want to thank him once again for being on. That was a really, really solid interview.
I thought it was funny that when I asked him about Mike Wilbon from PTI on ESPN, he's big time. He doesn't have time for me. That tickled me a little bit. Adam's heavily respected writer and blogger for ESPN, and so it's funny how those guys rank themselves at ESPN and who they consider the kings of the mountain. So it was fun to him to shed light on that.
Well, let's go on ahead and do some of the games again, and we actually were talking about this one before he came on. Let's go on ahead and talk about the game that you watched, and you and I were texting back and forth Saturday morning. The unfortunate loss again. Arkansas loses to LSU.
Man, Felipe Franks slips down twice. And that one play down by the end zone, if he doesn't slip, Arkansas wins this game. Just a terrible break. Just a absolutely terrible break. I don't know if you call out those Nike cleats that Franks was wearing. I don't know what to call out. I don't know if it was just misfortune or divine intervention, but man, Arkansas should have won that game. And this is sad, Stephen, that we've got to say this about Arkansas. They should have won against Auburn. They should have won against LSU, but they didn't. Is this a sign, or are they starting to trend the other way now? That loss to LSU might sting the Razorbacks for a couple of weeks. I don't know if they recover and bounce back and are the same team again, but tough breaks, and they've come back. They've come on the bad side on both of them, and I don't know if Arkansas bounces back and just dominates here the rest of this 2020 season.
Well, I'm actually going to play a video here, but there is a little bit of audio in it because of the egregious calls that were made in this game. So if we start hearing people talk, we'll have to be quiet. But man, what did you think about the two calls in this game?
The SEC, home of the best football, the prettiest women, softest toilet paper, the cleanest air, and the worst officials.
Yes.
I don't know, Stephen. You just question how.
To me, this is clearly a fumble, and the football was recovered by the Arkansas defense.
After further review, although the ball was clearly fumbled, there was no clear recovery of the ball, so the ruling on the field stands.
Oh, wow. I don't know how that's possible. And if you're an Arkansas fan, you're going, not again. Not again. Because this is the end of the Auburn game. No clear recovery. Joe Fouché, number 7, for Arkansas, comes in, rakes this ball out. There's no clear recovery. I don't know how that's possible. Look who comes out of the pile with the football. It's clearly Arkansas's ball. I don't. That's a really bad call. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. That's a clear recovery by the defense right there. I have no idea how that could have been arrived upon as no clear recovery.
Matt Stinchcomb, my friend, is one of the best, I do believe.
Matt Stinchcomb was one of the best on the field when he played in the SEC way back in the day. Stephen, let me throw this at you.
What else a defender can do right there?
Turned his whole body as he made that tackle.
And Butte is going to the ground. I mean, other than just avoid the receiver entirely, I don't know what else he can do. He's turned completely sideways. I don't know how that could be targeting.
Well, it was targeting, and it was a fumble, and both of them were not called.
Let me throw this at you, Stephen. Those 2 calls in that game, then we saw the call with the Auburn game that cost them. Go back to the beginning of the season when we all thought Arkansas might be a winless football team. What did the SEC office do to the Razorbacks?
They gave them the toughest schedule in the country.
Yeah. They added Florida to that schedule. And who else did they add?
Alabama, Georgia.
They added Georgia. They gave them the 2 worst. No team in the West got that. Just that brutalness. It's just brutal. I mean, Ole Miss got South Carolina in one of their matchups. Mississippi State got Vanderbilt. And then here's Arkansas, and it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to give you Florida and Georgia. I mean, I don't want to believe in conspiracy theories, but you know what, Arkansas, I'm with you on this one. I side with the Razorbacks completely on this. This is crazy, Stephen. This is just ballistic crazy. I mean, they got messed up on that call. Auburn. Everything's falling apart for Arkansas, and it has nothing to do with Arkansas. It has everything to do with SEC officials or the SEC office. This is crazy.
You know how someone always says, drain the swamp? Well, that not only applies to Washington, if you agree with that, that also, I think, applies to the SEC office. Because I honestly and truthfully believe that there is a lot of nasty dealings going on up there, and it is very egregious, and it is very observed by these calls. I mean, it is awful.
It's crazy to think that the day and time that we live in, with the technologies that we have, of reviewing plays and even teaching, officiating, that this stuff is still happening, and it's happening to one team over and over and over.
But here's the deal. If the coach says anything about it, they, 25,000, 50,000, yada, yada, yada. However, the referees are not. There's no accountability because I believe, if you will remember, this actual crew that was on the game Saturday also was the one that botched the one down at Auburn.
I didn't know that. If it was the same crew, I did not know that. Here's the craziness, Stephen, that, a true freshman kid could go out there and play for Arkansas and fumble, the ball at the biggest point of the game. That 18-year-old has to go to the media after the game, and he has to, he's shamed by the media, and they're asking him questions and everything else. A coach can make a terrible call, and then he's brought in, and and they talk about that. A defensive coordinator can give up 50 points to a team that's not any good, and a defensive coordinator will be called in for an interview after the game, and the media will have their way with him.
Yes.
But an SEC official can completely rob a game And, oh, no, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about who made that call. We're not going to talk about, what the SEC office did. And, we had Tony Barnhart on earlier this year, and Tony talked about this briefly, and he says we got to protect the officials. And I'm in a disagreement with that now. From now on, I am not. I think we need to hold these officials accountable, and I think the officials should do interviews after the game. I think they should do interviews. Jim Joyce, when he blew that call in Major League Baseball for the no-hitter in Detroit, and he messed up that call at first base, and Jim Joyce was brought to interview, and he apologized. He goes, "I made the wrong call," and he cried about it.
Yes.
And Jim Joyce, you'll hear Major League Baseball players talk about Jim Joyce as the absolute best umpire in Major League Baseball. He just made a bad call. Okay, I can live with an SEC official making a bad call. But when this thing happens over and over and over and over to one school like Arkansas, there's a problem. Someone needs to answer this. It could be coincidence, but someone still needs to answer for it.
I agree with that. Well, dude, and by the way, LSU has now won 5 straight in the series, and that is the most since Arkansas joined the SEC.
Wow. And I'm not picking on Arkansas because, they're getting beat up enough, but those wins over the last few years over Arkansas, that's nothing to brag about, LSU. There's nothing to brag about at all.
Yep. All right. Next up is going to be we talked about it a little bit with Adam about how bad is this Penn State program. I mean, they went from ranked 6th in the country now to 0-5 on the year as they fell to Iowa this past weekend, 41-21. And man, I got to tell you, this weekend is actually going to be a decent game because Penn State takes on Michigan.
Every year, Stephen, there's always someone ranked in the top 10 who, by the end of the season, has a losing record. It happens almost every single year. Or they're barely ranked if ranked at all. I don't think anyone saw Penn State falling apart like this. I think Indiana exposed so many things against Penn State in the very first ball game of the year, just exposed them tremendously. And here you go. This is what we're seeing. Adam says he felt pretty secure about James Franklin. He's got more resources to that than I do, and more than what you can read on the internet. He's got direct sources with Penn State. So I'm going to take Adam's word, but if this keeps up, the rumblings are only going to grow. I think the rumblings just started now in Happy Valley. I think they're going to grow more and more. But I've said it once, I'll say it again. Joe Moorhead is going to be offered the offensive coordinator job in the offseason, and they're going to offer him closer to $3 million than $2 million to come back to Happy Valley to get the Nittany Lions and that offense going again. That is a crazy situation happening up there at Penn State. That offense is not good. The defense needs improvement, but that offense is in bad shape, and they need some help bad. And I think they'll go to Joe Moorhead, who had that program going big time on offense, and I think they'll do anything they can to bring Joe back.
Well, let's go on ahead and talk about the heartbreak of the weekend. Are you ready?
Sure.
Man,
You talking about the Hoosiers?
What now?
You talking about the Hoosiers?
No.
Oh.
Our friend of the show, head coach Hugh Freeze, man, that without a doubt was the biggest heartbreak of a football game. Liberty came into this game 8-0, and there was a blocked field goal that would have ultimately won them the football game, and Liberty falls to North Carolina State 15-14.
I was scared for the Flames in this game.
Right there.
I was scared for them. As I said on the show last week, this is not a good matchup for Liberty. And NC State kind of proved it there. Hugh Freeze, who is a better coach than I'll ever be and all of us put together, He played it safe there toward the end. He played for the field goal, and it cost him. And I got a feeling he has coached that thing in his mind 1,000 times since that game. And he could probably tell you more than once of the mistakes that he made. But Liberty, it was fun. It still will be fun the rest of the season. But man, that's just kind of sad what happened.
Dude, let's watch these last few plays because I love Coach Freeze. But here's the deal. He was way too conservative with the last few plays. Why not, in the age of 2020, why not try to go for the touchdown rather than just go for the field goal and hope you get it?
My only guess is, and I feel pretty confident in this, is that he wanted to run that clock down. He wanted to waste the timeouts for NC State. He wanted to run that clock down and give them little time to do anything. And so if he's turning the ball over with 90 seconds or less and they don't have any timeouts, you feel pretty good about things. But, man, heartbreaker, because it would have been fun to see an undefeated Liberty. Would they have put them in, a random bowl game like the Outback Bowl or whatever? Who knows?
Right.
But, man.
Maybe a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah. And I would have been tickled to death to see a Liberty and, I don't know what the off New Year's Six Bowl is this year, whether it be the peach or the cotton or what, but that would have been a great story. It would have been such a fun story. But, now only thing that people are talking about with Liberty is what school is Hugh Freeze going to go to. That's what, it's the Hugh Freeze sweepstakes right now. And that's what they're talking about in the SEC. It's a race between Tennessee and South Carolina, and South Carolina's in the lead because they've already fired their coach.
That snaps a 10-game winning streak for the Liberty Flames, and Hugh Freeze over the last 22 games is only 16-6. That, my friend, is not too shabby.
No, you got to remember he doesn't really have a full staff of D1 players. I mean, they've only been doing D1 football for 2 years, so he had a whole roster full of guys that were not D1 players when they started this. So I would say 3/4 of his roster right now are not D1 players. So that's impressive. Very impressive.
Yes. All right, man. Well, I have got to ask you this, okay? Because this shocked me something awful the other night, because I actually watched this game, and this game actually went into quadruple overtime. And it was Mr. Khaki Pants on the road. And if you don't know who that is Jim Harbaugh on the road taking on Greg Schiano and Rutgers. And Rutgers went up 17-0 over Michigan. Then you have the second half kickoff returned here all the way into the end zone for a touchdown. Here comes Michigan. But guys and Heath, here is what I want to bring your attention to when we get towards the end of the video. Is the culture at Michigan gone from contending for national championships and competing with teams like, Ohio State and Alabama? Has it gone from that to storming the field and being really excited about beating a decent or a less subpar Rutgers team? I mean, because right here, when they got the interception, you will see right here, they look like they've just won the national championship and they just beat Rutgers.
A 1-3 Rutgers team.
I mean, is that the new norm now for Michigan? I mean, come on, people.
No. They were excited. I think Michigan players will tell you that they stole that game, that they got down early. They had a lot of breaks go against them. They weren't prepared, whether it be for COVID reasons or whatever else. It looked like it was a very challenging week for the Wolverines, and they had all the breaks go against them early, and then they pulled it out at the end. So props to them. And Stephen, maybe this is the type of game that pulls everything together
Right.
for Michigan. I've always been a big fan of Harbaugh. I thought he got a bum deal toward the end of his career with the Colts in the NFL. He did amazing things at University of San Diego. He did amazing things at Stanford. We saw what he did with the 49ers. And then here he comes all the way across the country to Michigan to help his school that was in dire need. And it looked like it was going to pay off. And now it's like, yeah, not so much.
Right.
Maybe we can put Michigan in with, other places like Nebraska and Tennessee.
Yes.
You can't get the recruits that you used to. You can't say, hey, we play on television every week, because everyone plays on television every week. So there's a situation brewing there at Michigan. I don't know the answers, but I know Michigan didn't know the answers either. And
Right.
they're having lots
I'm
of
gonna pull you up real quick. I'm gonna pull you up full screen. I'll be right back.
talking about Tennessee. Tennessee used to have everything at their disposal in the 70s, 80s, and especially the 90s. They would tell recruits all across the nation, hey, this is, you come here to Tennessee, you're playing on national television every week. That was a selling point. Tennessee used to have the highest budget in college football. They used to spend the most, more than anybody else in the SEC. Their coaching assistants and coordinators got paid more than anybody. That's not the case anymore. They had this great recruiting budget. They used to recruit nationwide. They don't do that anymore. And also, when Tennessee was striving, South Carolina was not an issue. Georgia was down. Alabama was not consistent and not doing anything at a big-time level except for the year 1992. And so now you look at things going on. Vanderbilt has come up. Vanderbilt's been going to bowls the last couple of years. South Carolina, when Spurrier came in there, Georgia started doing things. Florida has come onto the scene. So, look what's happened since Tennessee has won the national championship. Florida has won multiple national championships. Georgia sometimes had a winning season, sometimes they didn't. Now Georgia is trying to win a national title. South Carolina wants to throw the ball all over the yard, and they're trying to do things. Clemson wasn't around making anything serious. So, the recruiting base all around Tennessee is now being vacuumed out by other schools, and so now it's a huge problem for Tennessee to get back into the game. You would think with this SEC money they would do what they used to do and have the highest paid coaching staff and get the best guys in there to coach and recruit. But that's clearly not the case. And I don't agree with Paul Feinbaum when he called Jeremy Pruitt a high school coach this past week. I thought that was a little uncalled for, but I don't think Jeremy Pruitt's the answer in Knoxville. I don't think he's a high school coach. I mean, he was very successful before he came to Knoxville there in Tuscaloosa, but I don't think Jeremy Pruitt is the answer moving forward for Tennessee. And what an incredible, just a massive bad business decision by the school to extend that contract. I don't understand the line of thinking on that. Now you've put yourself in a very hurtful situation, Tennessee, from the business side of things, and that's going to hurt you from hiring what you need, which is better coordinators and assistant coaches. Now you have to go on the cheap and find guys, and you got to skimp here and there. Tennessee has to be held accountable, and it starts with the president and the athletic director. It's crazy what's going on.
And then, of course, there was your famous Gus Malzahn. Boom! Boom! I love when he does that, man. It's like he's so emotional, man,
Steven, do you think Gus is on the hot seat?
Not right now. I don't. Now, of course, if they would have dropped the Ole Miss game and the Arkansas game, yes, I do. I think that is the margin of error that we have right now.
Well, they kind of did drop those games, right? I mean, we all know that crazy call with Arkansas, and then the crazy no fumble called in the Ole Miss game. So, I mean, the officials have helped Auburn out twice.
Yes.
With wins. So, I mean, let's just say they stumble down the end of the season. Let's see, they got Bama, they got Mississippi State, and they have A&M. Do they have A&M?
Yes.
Steven, what if they lose those last 3 games and they start talking about these other games? I mean, I don't think Gus is safe. I mean, the Hugh Freeze sweepstakes is now just getting started.
Yes. And by the way, Tennessee has lost 5 straight. Its longest losing streak since 1988.
Wow. Hey, that's a fun question to think about. Hugh Freeze and Bo Nix.
That's interesting.
That would be a lot of fun.
All right, next up, let's go on ahead and get to our friend of the show, John Clark Packer, was actually really thrilled and excited about the performance of this football team this past weekend. And we kind of talked about, we showed the highlights there when we were talking with Adam. The Mississippi State Bulldogs almost pulled the upset in Athens.
49 scholarship players. Mississippi State fans are calling them the 49ers, the 49 Warriors. Mississippi State did not have to play this game whatsoever. No. I think that talks about the testament and the fortitude of Mike Leach and this team. He's been wanting, Leach said he was going to purge the roster. He was going to purge it till he only had guys who want to be there. Those 49 players the other night showed they definitely want to be there. Here's the crazy thing, Stephen. I heard this from Steve Robertson on his podcast talking about this game. Of the 22 starters for Mississippi State the other night, there were 6 seniors, 2 juniors, 14 underclassmen, including true freshmen. You had a true freshman at running back. You had true freshman at wide receiver. You had true freshmen under center playing quarterback. So quarterback, running back, wide receiver. You had true freshmen. You had walk-ons starting on defense. I mean, this is crazy. Did Georgia take them light? Yes, Georgia took them light. If Georgia was excited about this game, Georgia could have blown them off the field. But Georgia didn't. Georgia slept.
Honestly, though, Mississippi State, if you go back and you watch the highlights of this football game, it was check down, check down, check down, check down, and Mississippi State walked right down the field on them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the air raid, is that you attack space. There's not a go-to receiver in the air.
But you know what? They didn't do that against Arkansas. They didn't do that against Kentucky because they tried to, but it was all like, okay, well, when you watched it versus Georgia, Mississippi State would be in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. Whereas with Kentucky and Arkansas, it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. So, if you're Kirby Smart and you're watching this, you're like, my defense did not do too well today.
No, his defense. And again, I don't think they were all that excited. I do laugh at the fact, especially the superstitious people, the black jerseys at Georgia. They talk about, they used to wear those for big games. They used to wear that for, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party and, big games. Of course, the funeral game against Bama, they were going to wear black.
Yes. Oh, my God. That was a mistake.
Yeah. Well, now they think, ever since that Bama game, the funeral game, they think that the black jerseys are cursed. And so they broke them out for like, what was it, like La Tech or somebody, and they barely beat them. I think they wore them against South Carolina last year, maybe.
And South Carolina beat them.
Yeah. So here they are wearing the black jerseys tonight, and it almost cost them. But
yeah.
I was watching this game and I texted a couple of people that, as soon as State got that stop there at the end of the game, they were going to get the ball back. I was like, you've got to go for 2 if you score here. You got to leave it all out in the field. You've got 49 guys on scholarship. You can't possibly go to overtime and just keep punching with Georgia. You can't do it, and so one glaring thing that was bad for Mississippi State on defense the other night, they basically told JT Daniels, if you're going to beat us, you're going to throw it over the top. We're going to take away the running game from you. And JT Daniels threw it over the top all night long beautifully. Mississippi State needs a safety bad, very bad. They need some help in the secondary. And then you're playing the Egg Bowl this week. Matt Corral can have a field day with that secondary. If they take the same approach and they let Matt Corral throw over the top, he will throw over the top. So it's all going to be about pressure and execution. Can Matt Corral make that throw all week, all game this week in the Egg Bowl?
Georgia rushed for 8 yards, the fewest yards allowed by Mississippi State in the last 15 seasons.
Wow. I know when was Rudy Johnson at Auburn? Was that 1999, I believe?
Yes.
Maybe 2000. I think it was 99. If I'm not mistaken, Auburn rushed for 23 yards that day. Or maybe Rudy just rushed for 23 yards. That's the lowest I remember in Mississippi State defense holding someone, but 8 yards. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's impressive.
All right, we got 2 games left, and I guess we will start with the top team in the nation. Did you watch any of the Alabama-Kentucky game?
Yes, I did. I watched. Kentucky was hanging very tough, but that right there. Stephen, is there a ghost in that stadium that just doesn't allow kickers to do anything?
I have no clue, but it just, man, it's always a nightmare.
The kicking game is just a nightmare for anybody in Tuscaloosa. I don't know what's going on with that. But, I watched this. Kentucky had so many opportunities early to stay in this game, and they just did not cash in on any of them.
Right.
But, what was – I'm not a betting man, but I think the spread was 30 points. How do you double that?
Yes.
How do you double that? That's a 60-point victory.
Right.
That's amazing. But Alabama, I think, is the best team in college football. They've got issues on defense. Well, not Saturday night they didn't with 3 points, but they got some issues on defense. Kentucky we know is a Jekyll and Hyde team.
And by the way, there is you saw right there in the highlights, Cole Kubelik on the sideline.
Yeah, Cole is going to be on the show here shortly. Looking forward to having Cole return to the Stingray Show.
Yes. So that's and right there was Cole. I'm watching the highlights again as they roll through on Facebook. I've got this segment right here, and then I'm watching everything that goes on Facebook to make sure everything is smooth going.
Look at you, Mr. Big Time. There's Mr. Khaki Pants and there's Mr. Fancy Pants. And that's you, Steven, Mr. Fancy Pants.
By the way, Brent McMurphy just tweeted out here just a little bit ago that the Tulsa-Houston game has been postponed due to Houston having COVID issues.
I don't want to talk about COVID. Let's move on.
All right. And next up and finally is a pretty I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call you out, buddy.
Oh, here we go.
Last week, you actually said on the show.
I know what I said.
Now, I'm not going to play the video. But you said that Gundy had done pretty well against the Oklahoma Sooners. Well, if that was the case, it got a lot worse on Saturday.
Yeah, Larry called me out on that. And thank you, Larry, for doing so. Yeah, I had my stats mixed up there. That's on me. Gundy's only beat Oklahoma twice.
Yes.
It's just crazy to see that. But Oklahoma State just did not look like they even wanted to play this game. It's like they were going through the motions. Like they just didn't care. This is an intense rivalry.
Definitely. There was a lot of chirping back and forth, and they actually threw a flag for taunting on Oklahoma there that extended that drive right there, which were actually the first points for Oklahoma State when they were actually down 21-0.
Yeah. Every time I see those Oklahoma State uniforms, I think Halloween.
Yes.
Orange and black. Yeah, I've never got that. But anyway, Yeah, Oklahoma clearly a more superior team. Looking at Gundy, I think Gundy's a great coach, but you look at him during big games and everything, and I think this is he kind of falls into the Dan Mullen realm of things. When Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State, Dan's never going to win a national title in Starkville. He's probably not going to win the SEC West while in Starkville, but Dan's going to win you anywhere between 7 and 10 games this season.
Right.
And he's always going to make you competitive in those games. But the same thing with Gundy.
I mean, they were not even competitive in that game.
No, Gundy, his teams are always going to win 7 to 10 games a season. He's going to make things, competitive for the most part. But that game the other night and him against Oklahoma, it hasn't been pretty. Not at all.
Look at that stat down there: 2-14 against Oklahoma.
Yeah, are they waiting for him to go like 3-20? I mean, what?
Yes.
Can Oklahoma State hire a coach to consistently beat Oklahoma? Probably not. But
right.
I'll say this: I think Oklahoma's slipping a little bit from their national promise. They kept making the playoff, and they kept getting blown out in the playoff. And this year, I don't think they're going to make the playoff.
No.
And so it'd be a miracle if they do make the playoff. But that's the thing with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's slipping a little bit. Does Oklahoma State make a change? I don't think they do, but they make a change saying, "Hey, Oklahoma's slipping. We should do something about it. Let's use some of this late T. Boone Pickens money and go get Urban Meyer and pay him $12 million a year." I mean, that's of course not going to happen.
Right.
But I don't know the answers for Oklahoma State.
Well, and by the way, I've got to ask this: do you happen to know this person?
That is my dearly beloved mother. She is vacationing in Branson, Missouri for this Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving last weekend as our family, and so they're out hitting the road, and they should. I wish they would travel more, my parents, but yeah, that's a good old mom.
Well, thank you, Miss Hopkins, for watching the show. And we want to thank all of our viewers. And real quick, before I let you guys go, I've got one more thing I want to put back up on the screen here. Like I said, tomorrow we will be back here with another show with Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, and Cole Kubelik will be stopping by. Cole is actually on the call of the Mississippi State Ole Miss game, the Egg Bowl. So if you would like to get your questions in to ask us on the show, come on the Stingray Show, talk with us, and be a part of the show, you can do that right down there. Send myself or Heath a DM with your question, and we can send you the link to actually pop up on the Stingray Show and join us.
All right, Stephen. Well, other than that, brother, that was a pretty fun show. We had Adam on, Adam Rittenburg from ESPN. Adam, a wealth of knowledge, which we already knew.
Yes.
I did not know Adam was such a big fan of the coaching carousel. I'm going to have to start watching this stuff a little bit more often when coaches are coming up, especially in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you would like to watch this show, if you missed Adam's, interview, you can go back and watch it on my Facebook page, on my Twitter page, or on YouTube. So without further ado, we are signing off for today's show. Now, I will say this. We will be back here on the Stingray Show tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We started today at 3, where we were a little bit later due to some things. But with it being the day before Thanksgiving tomorrow, we will be back here at 1 o'clock on the Stingray Show. We hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you! Hoo, 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 hoo.
This is Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn. Worst defense ever! So without further ado, here is the biggest Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes.
Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass, launching the ball. Jennings, he's got it. Jennings, he's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee. They shock the Dogs in Sanford Stadium. Are you kidding me? My God Almighty! What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end this game. What a play! Wow!